سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. I want to welcome you all to our weekly reminder or a daily reminder on the trials and tribulations, wisdoms and benefits. Every single day in these last couple of days, we've been hearing a new update or a different type of news. As of today, we've learned that congregating more than 10 people together is also prohibited by the state, and that there will be fines incurred if one does come together. And so as we continue to stay at home and continue to be safe and continue to do that which is right in regards to protecting ourselves and our families, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessing us, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting some khair and barakah in this process that we are experiencing. So the question that all of us grapple with, and one of the most difficult questions of faith, is why does evil exist? Why does evil continue to harm us and affect us? And this is why one of the famous scholars, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he actually says that if a person establishes this pillar of their faith, the pillar of qada, the pillar of fate, which is also one of the most difficult aspects of our fate. So if you look at our iman, we have 6 pillars of faith, we have 6 pillars of iman. The first being believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the last one being believing in qadar and qada, that everything that happens through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in fate and predestination. When we look in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly emphasizes 2 of these pillars. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly, in almost on every page of the Quran, emphasizing these 2 very important pillars of our tradition, of our faith, which is believe in Allah and believe in the hereafter. Now, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma actually says about these 2 that although it's one of the most difficult pillars of faith to understand and to process, predestination, that everything happens through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that if you establish this pillar, that you established your tawheed, you established your belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if this pillar here is weak, or if you haven't been able to establish this pillar of understanding, predestination, of understanding that everything is happening through the will and the power and the qada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it affects your belief, or affects your understanding of the tawheed, your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we grapple with this situation, as we grapple with this part of our faith as well, which is why does evil exist, or why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow this to happen, understand that before we were even created, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created and gave the news to the angels that He was going to create human beings, the first thing that they did was say, "Oh Allah, why are you creating a creation that is going to cause mischief, going to cause havoc, is going to shed blood on earth?" These were the objections of the angels, that these angelic creation made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, "Oh Allah, why are you creating human beings? They're going to cause problems, they're going to cause mischief, they're going to cause bloodshed." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's response to the angels is a fundamental principle that we need to always turn to in the times of trials and tribulations, and anything that we experience in life for that matter, which is, "Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun." I know that which you do not know. Even the angels objected. And when the angels objected, Allah reminded them this fundamental principle, that Allah at the end of the day knows much more than we know. Allah is in control much more than we are. So when all fails according to our plan, know that everything is going in accordance to the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always more powerful. So as we fight with ourselves to understand this concept of qadar and qada, and this is one of the most difficult questions that we are asked, not only from an Islamic perspective, but a faith perspective in general, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. This is a very difficult conversation and discussion to have. This is why it's the most difficult thing to wrap our heads around. And this is why, when we have this belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we start to understand that no matter what happens, no matter what we experience, there is a purpose for everything and there is a benefit to everything. So let us get started, inshallah, with this little book that we are covering. It's written by Izzuddin Abdul Salam, rahmatullahi alayhi. He actually puts together benefits, about 17 benefits of trials and tribulations. And he presents some thoughts and ideas on how we actually benefit from trials and tribulations. We in reality don't know what a trial or a tribulation brings to us. A lot of times we ask this question. We are asked this question by our children, and a lot of times we ourselves ask this question, which is, is a test or a trial or a tribulation a test from Allah, or is it a punishment? And a lot of times we hear people saying that this is a punishment of God, that this is a punishment of Allah, that this is Allah's wrath coming upon us. But how do we truly know if this is the punishment of Allah or a test of Allah? If the trial and the tribulation that you are going through allows you to connect to Allah, allows you to turn back to Allah, then that test and that trial and that tribulation is truly a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if that trial or that tribulation or that challenge pushes you further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that trial or that tribulation or that challenge we are experiencing may indeed be a punishment for us, as it's pushing us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that brings us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything that makes us reflect, anything that turns us back to God, allows us to make tawbah, allows us to engage in dua and dhikr, is truly a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we find in this current situation. It allows us all to turn back to Allah. It is allowing us all to make dhikr. It is allowing us all to reconnect to the Quran and the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though we may find ourselves closed off from the masjid, right? Even if we find ourselves closed from this facility and this building, we still have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with us. So Izzuddin Abdul Salam, rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentions that the first benefit or the first wisdom of any trial and any tribulation is that it should make a person realize the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It makes a person realize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's lordship. And it also makes a person realize the encompassing power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Aziz, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Qahhar. These are the first things that we realize in front of any trial and tribulation. We start to realize how amazing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. That just as how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a creator of every other and every single creation on earth. We start to realize His majesty. We start to realize how honorable Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. We start to realize the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also realize, when we realize the honor of Allah or realize the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does that mean? What does it mean that we start to realize the power of Allah? All of us in this situation, in this very challenging crisis that we are experiencing, have felt somewhat paralyzed, have felt somewhat unable to do or feel comfortable or to feel certain as we usually do in other places. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us that He's in full control. That no matter how prepared we think we are, or how protected we think we are, or how secure we think we are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses His power. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also reminding us that when you're in these moments When you're in these moments of stress and anxiety and loneliness, sometimes we feel lonely in these moments. We feel disconnected in these moments. We feel like we're lost in these moments. We remember the words of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ أَحَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is closer to us than our jugular veins. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu were in the cave, when they were fleeing Makkah Mukarramah, they're fleeing the Kaaba. Like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has to overcome the greatest adversities in his life. He has the greatest challenges that he's coming over. And one of those challenges is the Prophet ﷺ has to flee Mecca. He's escaping Mecca. He's fleeing Mecca while everybody is on the hunt for the Prophet ﷺ. And he's in a cave with his companion Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And in that moment, Abu Bakr is fearful. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is scared. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu thinks that this is the end. And immediately the Prophet ﷺ reminds him that, "O Abu Bakr, la tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana." O Abu Bakr, don't fear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you. So when we are faced with any trial and tribulation, we realize how powerful Allah is, how weak we are, and we also realize how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always with us. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always by our side. No matter where we are, no matter where we may be, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always with us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be there as our support. We know as a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He created us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us with angels that are on our sides. These are known as the guardian angels that are always there in our protection, that are always there in safeguarding us from harms and hardships and difficulties. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we wrap up, that He grants us true realization of Allah's power and our weakness, of Allah's greatness and our shortcomings. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Aziz, the one who is in ultimate control of everything. You know, there was once a person who said that not even God could sink the ship. As human beings, at times we become so cocky, we become so arrogant in regards to our advancements and our achievements that we will say statements like, not even God can affect us. And these are those moments where we're reminded that we are not in the driver's seat, that we are not in control, that we will take our steps and plan and take precautions, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ultimately in control, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most powerful. So as we wrap up, may Allah allow us to realize this. Allah allow us to realize our weakness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to realize our beginning and where we will end. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to realize His oneness and His power and His tawheed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us strong conviction in all of the pillars of Iman. Believing in Allah, believing in the angels, believing in the books, believing in the prophets, believing in the hereafter, and one of the most difficult pillars of faith, believing in qadar and qada, believing in predestination, and believing in fate, that everything that's happening is happening through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to leave you with one dua that we can all recite, and inshallah we will post this dua on our Facebook and our social media platforms, which is Bismillah alladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. Recite this in the morning, recite this in the evening. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us that anybody who recites this in the morning 3 times, nothing can harm him till the evening. And anybody who recites this in the evening 3 times, nothing can harm them till the morning. Bismillah alladhi لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. جزاكم الله خيرا. Your brother Noman Hussain. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.